The Nintendo Switch is already almost 7 years old, which is kind of really hard to believe, especially as somebody who's been around since the beginning of the Switch's life. And 7 years is no joke, too, for a console's lifespan, which naturally brings up the question of when are we going to get the next console? At the time of writing this video, we still don't know what the next console is going to be. It could end up being another hybrid type console, or it could end up being just a regular stay at home console. The point is that at this point, we just don't know. It's mainly speculation. But if you want my opinion, honestly, I think it'll be another Switch, akin to the Switch 2. I think the concept of a portable device that is able to play full games that don't have to be just shitty ports of the full console experience is a lightning in a bottle idea. And I don't really think Nintendo is ready to get rid of that idea just yet. I mean, hell, the fact that I'm able to play games like Skyward Sword and Mario Odyssey on the go is crazy. I mean, I remember when I was back in third grade playing on my 3DS thinking, man, I really wish games like Wind Waker and Twilight Princess were able to be brought over to the 3DS. And though at the time, my prayers weren't answered, nowadays, that's a very real thing. We have the technology to be able to do that. Please, Nintendo, please bring over Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD to the Switch. Please. To me, it just personally doesn't really make sense why Nintendo would abandon such a great idea so quickly. If the Switch 2 is indeed a thing that Nintendo is working on, here are some features that I would like to see. Number one would have to be a bit of an oddball choice, and that would have to be Street Pass. Street Pass was a really cute idea on the 3DS that made the idea of walking around with the 3DS in your pocket just as fun as playing the actual games. If two people had a 3DS and were walking near each other, they would be able to send data such as the Mii that was set as the main Mii of your system, or save data for games that supported Street Pass to the other console. The main thing that Street Pass was used for was a pre-installed app on the 3DS called the Street Pass Me Plaza, and though just the idea of filling up a plaza with the Miis of people that you would meet out on the street is a really fun and cool idea already, what made it even cooler was the fact that, hey, you could use these for little fun minigames. Now, the Street Pass Me Plaza came installed with two games on the Switch's launch, one of which being Find Me and the other being Puzzle Swap. Find Me was this cute little turn-based RPG where essentially what would happen is the main Mii that you set as you would be kidnapped by this evil dark ghost thing, and the people that you would meet via Street Pass would end up being the party members that would go off in these battles to save the king. It was incredibly basic, and there wasn't much customization to it, which is to be expected for something that was essentially just freeware to sell the console, but it was still a cute and awesome idea that later went on to inspire another great game, Miitopia, on the 3DS and later the Switch. But again, Find Me wasn't the only game in the plaza. There was also Puzzle Swap. Puzzle Swap was another really interesting idea where every few months or so, Nintendo would drop a puzzle in this game that you could collect pieces for to fill out the puzzle, and it would make this really cool image. And they would do these for game releases, cool events, and even in Japan for the Big Mac. Which I don't necessarily know if collecting puzzle pieces for a image about the Big Mac would make me want to go to McDonald's and get one, but to each their own, I guess. But essentially the idea was that everybody that you met via Street Pass, you could look at their puzzles and what pieces they owned, and if they had a piece that you didn't have, you could copy it from essentially their storage, and you would go around, and it was this really cool idea where you would meet people and you would trade these puzzle pieces to fill up these images. Imagine something like that on the Switch. Imagine you could get new backgrounds set on your Switch by filling up these puzzles that you could get by taking your Switch outside and meeting people. But if games like Find Me and Puzzle Swap weren't really your thing, Nintendo released even more for the Plaza via paid DLC. Now, I didn't really own all of these games growing up, but I did own Battleground Z and MiiForce, which was a 2D space shooter and zombie game respectively, and these little bite-sized games were enough fun that it was nice to take your 3DS out on walks and come back home and know that if you had visited a populated area, then you could continue fighting on to save your Mii, or fight zombies, or just any of these cute little games. It's just a fun, cool idea and concept. This isn't even mentioning all of the first-party games on the 3DS that had used Street Street Pass, like A Link Between Worlds. A Link Between Worlds had this really awesome side quest slash feature where if you pass somebody else who had A Link Between Worlds save data, whatever equipment or upgrades that they had would pop up on a Shadow Link in Kakariko Village that you could fight on a one-on-one battle. This is a cool idea. Imagine if Tears of the Kingdom had a feature like this, where you pass by somebody and a copy of their Link with their items, their equipment, and their sage powers would pop up and you could fight them in your game on a one-on-one battle. That's an awesome, cool idea and adds so much replayability to the game because it's an enemy that is different every time. It's different every time you want to fight them, and it depends. There could be a whole scene where people are meeting up because they want to fight each other in the game. Or hell, even imagine in a game like Super Mario Odyssey that there are these little racetracks that you could do on your own time and you could upload via Street Pass. So if you went out on a walk and came back home, there are these little racetracks that you can race the ghosts of people's time attack data. There is so much you could do with Street Pass on the Switch too. There are so many cool ideas that I have that I'm sure Nintendo could come up with a lot more that would just be so cool to see, and just another reason why you would want to go out and get a Switch too. It would also encourage a lot more community within the Nintendo fan base because there are all these things that you could only do if you were to go out and find other people with a Switch, which would encourage people who own Switches to come and meet together. That's a cool idea. That's so awesome. The next thing that I would love to see on the Switch 2 is full backwards compatibility with the Switch library. I know a lot of people see this as a bit of too big of a request, but for a company like Nintendo, it's totally 100% doable, and I feel like a lot of people forget just how important backwards compatibility has been for Nintendo in the past, even as far back as the Super Nintendo. Now, you might be saying to yourself, what do you mean the Super Nintendo? That wasn't able to play NES cartridges, what are you talking about? But it was able to play Game Boy games via the Game Boy Player, which was this really cool piece of hardware where it was a cartridge that you would plug into the SNES, and you could then plug in a Game Boy cartridge into that and play Game Boy games on the TV. And speaking of the Game Boy line was very well known for having backwards compatibility with the previous systems in the line. The Game Boy Color was able to play all of the original Game Boy games, and the Game Boy Advance was able to play all of the original Game Boy games and Game Boy Color games. And it doesn't even end there. The original DS model included a separate cartridge slot that you could plug in Game Boy Advance games into. And although it didn't allow you to play Game Boy Color or original Game Boy games, the thought was very much still appreciated. And even then, for Nintendo's handheld consoles, it still doesn't end there. The 3DS had full backwards compatibility with the DS. And if you want to keep going, the Wii had full GameCube support, the Wii U had full Wii support. I would just love to see the Switch 2 able to play all of the Switch games. The Switch has one of the strongest game libraries of any console ever, so if I have to hold around and carry two huge portable systems with me just to be able to play these awesome games, that's so unfortunate. Having the entire Switch library would really go a long way in making the Switch 2 the ultimate Nintendo gaming machine, which also kind of brings me to my next point. It is no surprise that NSO was such a huge step down from the Virtual Console of days past. The Wii had started the Virtual Console trend with NES support all the way through the Nintendo 64, and had even included non-Nintendo consoles such as the Mega Drive, Master System, and even the TurboGrafx, which how many of you guys knew what the hell the TurboGrafx was before the Wii? Virtual Console had then later returned on the 3DS and the Wii U with slight tweaks and enhancements and even more games that never had gotten to see the light of day on the Wii, such as Earthbound, which up until that point had never gotten an official re-release in the States. I'm sure that this re-release was able to get more people into the Mother franchise, me included. Compare this massive library of legacy content with NSO and the slow trickle of content that we got. I mean, hell, it took almost a full year just to get SNES games on the Switch. And even then, what had started as new games every single month has whittled down to maybe one or two games every few months. The Switch 2 needs to have better legacy support. I think out of everything discussed in this video, this is the most important feature. The Switch has brought back Nintendo as a common household name after the failure that was the Wii U. The games that we've seen on the Switch are some of the best-selling games of their respective franchises. Series like Zelda, Mario, and even Pikmin are becoming household names again. Kids are in love with these franchises. People want to play more of these franchises. They want to go back to the older games. They want to see how these franchises have evolved, how they've gotten better, what the old games were like. This is free money for Nintendo and is a win for both the consumer and them. I would love to see a full return to form for Virtual Console on the Switch too. We don't even need to get rid of the subscription model that Nintendo so clearly wants us to get for Virtual Console games. They can have something akin to the Xbox Game Pass where you pay maybe $20, $30 a month for this access to these huge, unending library for games. Well, obviously not $30 a month. That's a little too expensive for Game Boy games. But my point still stands, and you can even have it as an option where if you just want one or two games, you can buy them separately for a cheaper price. This would help win over people who not only don't want to pay the subscription, but Nintendo would still be able to push the subscription model for people who are willing to buy it. And actually give us a full library this time, not these random NES and SNES games that we get after waiting for like 3 months. They had all of these games on the 3DS and the Wii U. I really don't see how it would be that hard to bring them over to the Switch. This is technology that Nintendo has been using since 2006. This is a service that has spanned multiple consoles. It shouldn't be that hard for them to get it right. I would love to see every single Nintendo system have support on the Switch too. I want Virtual Console from the NES all the way up until the Wii U, which that part I know is a very huge ask, especially with all of the deluxe ports that we've been getting as of late, but still, I would love for the entirety of the Nintendo library to be available on the Switch too, to be the ultimate Nintendo machine. Remember how good of a tagline "Everyone is Here" was to sell Smash Ultimate? Imagine a console with that tagline. Imagine a console with "Every game is here," every Nintendo game that you would ever want to play on one console. That would sell millions of units. Millions. It would be a free win of the generation for Nintendo. Truly, it would be. It's such an easy thing to market too. Are you a Nintendo fan? Have you missed the past few consoles and want to get back into the gaming industry for Nintendo? Well, here you go. You are able to play the games from when you were a child and the games that you have missed all on one console. You don't need to go out and look for a GameCube, look for a Wii, look for a Wii U, look for a Nintendo 64. They're all here on one console. This is really what I want for the Switch 2, to be the ultimate Nintendo machine. The Switch 2 would have huge shoes to fill. The Switch still continues to sell like crazy, and blockbuster titles are still being released, and there's no guarantee whether we'll have another runaway success like the Wii or a disappointing flop like the Wii U. Nintendo can't just release another Switch, a slightly stronger version. That won't sell units, that won't push units. We've seen this happen with the Wii U where people thought, hey, it's just a tablet that you can buy for the Wii. I truly do think that a few special features like Street Pass, like better Virtual Console, like backwards compatibility would really go a long way for making the Switch 2 stand out from the original Switch. And it really would provide a nice incentive to upgrade from the console that we all currently have. But at the end of the day, I really don't know though. I'm just some guy who is talking into his mic about something that I'd like to see, just because I'm a huge Nintendo fan and I like to see Nintendo succeed. I don't know though. I'm really interested in hearing what a lot of other people have to say because I feel like I only hear people talk about how they just want a more powerful console and not much else, but I'd love to hear some thoughts if you'd be willing to share with me. Thank you so much for listening to me rant, and have a wonderful day or night depending on what time you're watching this video. Thank you.